Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1700A, and today's date is November 5th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Trump Just Boxed the Fed In. This is how. Now, before I get started, I wanted to talk to all the Trump supporters. Noble Gold has just released a 24-karat solid gold commemorative Trump 2020 Freedom Coin. The demand for these has been staggering, and I have to tell you, there's now a waiting list for them. And if you're a Trump supporter and you want to own one of these, right now, if you get on their waiting list, they are currently discounting the coin over $50 per coin, which is an incredible savings for this commemorative coin. So to get on the waiting list and reserve yours, go to TrumpCoin2020.com to secure your coin. The link is at the bottom of this video. To make it a lot easier, all you have to do is click on it. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we know the plan is to contradict the Fed and blame the Fed when the economy comes down. And what we've been watching and what we've been seeing is exactly that. Trump is out there contradicting the Fed, pointing the finger, saying the Fed is going to be responsible if the economy falls apart. Other presidents have done this in the past, and some of them have been assassinated, others have been shot at, and they never mentioned it again. So this is a definite risk, but we can see right now that the plan is to box the Fed in, and it looks like the Fed is boxed in. And remember, I do believe that Powell is working with Trump. They're both on the same side. He chose Powell to be in power, and he is now the Fed chair. And Trump looks like he's using the same exact strategy that he used with Sessions. Oh, I don't really want him in there. I thought he was going to be an easy money Fed. He knew exactly who this individual was. He knew that he was going to push the interest rates higher every single time. And it looks like the plan is working, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later in this report. But I wanted to go out to the UK right now because we know the Brexit deal is going on. And it looks like Theresa May, it looks like she might finally be close to securing a deal that stands a chance of winning parliamentary approval, thanks to a major concession from the European Union. Now, the only problem with this deal is that it's secret. And a lot of the individuals that voted for the Brexit, they really don't know what this deal's about. Now, May has reportedly developed a detailed 50-page plan for a Brexit treaty that will allow the entire UK to remain within the EU customs union, that is, until a final deal can be hammered out during the transitionary period. Now, that is the key word, transitionary period. Because the Brexiters, you know what they are fearing the most? That this transitionary period will last forever. And the country will be in limbo forever. And I think this is what they're actually trying to do. I think this is what they're trying to push here. Because they figure, you know what? Let's say we're going forward with this deal. We'll keep it in limbo. And we'll say we're working out the logistics to the entire deal. And what do you get out of it? Well, the UK is really still part of the EU. The Brexiters didn't get what they wanted. They can't really argue because it's right in the middle of the transition period, and they're worried that there's never going to be an outcome from this transitionary period. And it looks like this is one way they might be trying to get around this. The other thing is we have to ask ourselves, why is it secret? I mean, the people came out and they voted, and they said, listen, we don't want to be part of the EU anymore. Why does the deal have to be secret? The people should know what this deal is about. And you know what's going to happen with a transitionary period. There's never going to be a deal. And you can see that the central banks are still pushing their agenda. We see out in the United States that the entire housing market, well, it's starting to implode right now. Out in California, homes in California, they're plunging very quickly like it's 2008. Now, CoreLogic, we mentioned San Francisco and other areas in California before, but CoreLogic is out there and they're saying that the housing market is plummeting. I mean, it has fallen by 18%. Now, we know why this is happening. We understand why it's happening. Because the Fed is raising the interest rates. What happens when you raise the interest rates? We spoke about this many, many times before. And we knew that this was going to happen once the rates started to move up. It pushed people out of the market because they now can't afford the house. The prices are too high. Yes, they're coming down in many different areas. People are going to start taking their houses off the market. And people are going to wait it out. This is what happened prior to 2008, 2009 with the housing market. There's no difference, really. Well, there is one difference. Back then, it was a people-driven bubble. Today, it's the central bank bubble of the housing market. And they only blew up the bubble in 20 cities. And when this comes tumbling down, and actually, they blew the bubbles in many, many places twice as large. And when this system comes down, it's going to be a disaster. Now, remember, the plan here is to box the Fed in and make the Fed take the blame. And we can see with what is happening in the economy right now, I know Trump is out there pushing the idea that the economy is doing great. Everything's fantastic. The mainstream media is having a very difficult time combating what he's saying. I mean, Obama is out there trying to convince everyone that it's his economy. The reason why he's doing this is to basically take the blame off of him and make the blame go to the Fed. This is why he's contradicting the Fed. This is why he's out there. But one thing that we can see right now is the manipulation. It's not making sense anymore, because if you look at markets manufacturing and the ISM manufacturing surveys, they're all over the place. It's complete confusion right now because it's all manipulated. And as we move forward, a lot of the numbers aren't going to make sense. And when things start to break down, the numbers aren't really going to make sense at all. Just like we saw back in 2008. Really go back to that time period and really think about what happened here. Even if you were one of those people that, hey, back in 2008, I still had my job. There were no problems. Everything looked great. Yes, people around me were getting laid off. I saw the companies closing, but I was safe. I didn't get raises for a couple of years, but I was safe. But even if you're one of those people, or you're one of those people that got hit really hard, think about what happened back then. When you saw the entire system start to fall apart, you heard layoffs were coming. You heard corporations, they needed bailouts. At that time, the stock market was around 14,000 points, and it was going higher, lower, but it was pretty darn high. When you look back in time, the housing market, they were telling you that it was contained. Everything was fine. The subprime securities at that time, they were telling you they were AAA. So on paper, with all the statistics that you looked at, it looked like everything was great. And then you had these anomalies with these companies like, what's going on with Bear Stearns? What's going on with AIG? It's a one-off thing. They just need a little bit of money to get by and everything will be fine. And then what happened? Everything started to fall apart. Company after company after company needed a bailout. The entire automotive industry needed a bailout. I mean, going back in June of that year of 2008, no one would have even seen this coming because everyone was looking at the mainstream media, everyone was listening to the Fed, and no one even realized it. Today, the same thing's happening, but it's much, much worse because they didn't make anything better. The whole thing is an illusion. Trump's using this illusion to point the finger at the organization that is going to be blamed, and that is the central bank. Now, we know the market has been moving up, moving down. $8 trillion, poof, gone. That was the largest drop since 2008. And Trump came out and he tweeted the following, and this is very important. If the Fed backs off and starts talking a little more dovish, I think we're going to be right back to our 2,800 to 2,900 target range that we've had for the S&P 500. Scott Wren, Wells Fargo, Donald Trump. So what is Trump actually saying here? He's basically setting up the argument that it's the Fed's fault if markets can't advance. Okay, so the Fed is raising rates. Trump is contradicting that, saying that they shouldn't be raising rates. Trump is blaming the Fed for the market falling, and if they can't advance, it's the Fed's fault. And when we look at what is going on here, especially with the interest rates, we can see that the Fed is continually raising rates. They are at around 2.5%, and we know the magic number is 3%. And when we reach 3%, that's when things start to fall apart. I mean, if we go back in time and we look at the magic numbers back then when we had the recession, we look at, 2006, 2007, we saw that the interest rates hit around 5%, and then things started to fall apart. So the magic number back then was 5%. If we look back prior to 2001 when we had the recession then, we look at that magic number, I mean, we were looking at something around 6.75%, close to 7%. That was the magic number then. If we go back to the 90s, we can see that magic number back then was about 6% or so. So at this point, and actually if you go all the way back, you'll notice that the interest rates continually drop since the 80s. And the reason for this is because the entire system cannot operate anymore with high interest rates, especially with the amount of debt that is being poured onto the global planet. It's completely impossible. So we're at the lowest point that we've seen ever. And out in Europe, they're in negative territory. So what is happening while this is all going on here? Well, growth is slowing globally. And this is with negative rates. South Korea, growth is slowing. Japan, growth is slowing. China, growth is slowing. Europe, growth is slowing. Every single place, growth is slowing. In the United States, debt serviceability, well, that's very difficult because as the debt continually moves up, which we see happening right now, I mean, it went up something like $8 trillion since Obama came into office, and it's going up even further. That's part of the plan, to keep the debt rising as fast as possible. When Obama was president, it was for a different reason, because they were getting prepared to move the system to another country. They were going to have war to cover it up. Now, they're setting up the narrative to blame it on the Fed, and they want to push the economy to the very edge while keeping the illusion that the economy is doing well. So the economy is doing well. They're pushing the debt as far as they can go, and we know that Bolton came out and he said that debt, the United States debt, is an economic threat, setting up the narrative. And what they've done here is they boxed in the Fed. How? How did they box in the Fed? Well, first of all, corporations, they're on the same debt expansion model, and they have huge problems. But the Fed, they are in trouble. And no matter what they do, there's nothing they can do to help the situation. So think about it. And this was part of the plan. And when I say the Fed, I'm talking about all the bad guys in the Fed, not those people who are trying to get rid of the Fed, but the others who want the Fed to continue. That's the deep state and the rest of the group. So if Powell doesn't raise rates in December, the Fed's independence will be questioned, having been perceived to have succumbed to political pressure and perhaps admitting that the market contract can't handle higher interest rates. If Powell does raise rates and markets freak and break their 2009 trends, the ensuing market calamity may force the Fed to cut rates again in 2019, and they're blamed either way. They are stuck. And this is why the IMF, Christine Lagarde, was out there in the beginning saying the Fed is raising rates too quickly, slow it down, maybe we shouldn't raise it anymore. Some of the other Fed heads said, maybe we shouldn't be raising rates right now. But this is part of the plan. Trump wants Powell to raise rates. Continue with raising rates because he knows, and those behind him know, this will destroy the entire system. Once the system is destroyed, and I'm talking about the central bank system, it will be blamed on them. And right now, the Fed, no matter what they do, he set it up so they are blamed either way. He has controlled the narrative. And other countries are starting to realize what is happening here. And what are they doing? Well, they're getting out of the central bank dollar, the Fed dollar. This is not a U.S. dollar. This is a Federal Reserve note, backed by nothing. And the central bank continually pushes the idea that it's a stable form of currency. Of course they have to do this. It's their currency. But it's been devalued over time, like 98%. And once all these dollars come rushing back to the United States, you're going to see a volatile currency like we've never seen before. But Russia, China, India, Japan, Turkey, Venezuela, Iran, they have all made moves away from the dollar, including dumping their holdings of U.S. debt. They know exactly what is going on, and most of these countries have been increasing their gold reserves. They understand what is going to happen here. They understand the path that we're on, and they're taking precautions and moving away from the old system. This is the old system. We're headed towards a new system. We're going to be transitioning to a new system. A system that is backed by the people. And remember, when we get rid of the Federal Reserve, it's not, oh, we just got rid of the central bank in the United States. We're talking about getting rid of the central banking system, the Rothschild central bank system. This is the entire plan that they're shooting for, to get rid of those individuals that are behind most everything. And once you get rid of that and you cut off the control of the central banks, that's when you've removed the deep state. That's when you remove the corruption. That's when you removed all of it. And that is the ultimate goal. And that's where we're headed. And that's why it takes so long. Because remember, these systems have been in place for a very long time. And most of the mainstream media, most of the countries, those leaders that are in power now, they go along with the central bank. The mainstream media defends the central bank. This is all about the change. And people are not going to like it. And they're going to scream and yell. They're going to argue, no, you can't do this. The central bank is very important. But again, they're defending their own system. That's why you hear that argument. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.